So, first of all, thank you so much for taking part in this session. Again, thank you to the people who've managed to make it all the way here. I know that travel is a headache. And also thank you to all the remote participants. I know in some cases there are many hours of time difference. So we do appreciate you being available at late hours or very early hours to take part in these talks. So this session, we're in a lucky position. We have a little bit more time because this is the only session in this room this afternoon. And we do have a few talks to go through. So you all have a bit more time to present and for questions.
There's a great session starting at 3.
Yeah,
yes, okay, that's true. That's true. So we can try to wrap up on time. Yes, that's a very good point.
I will be leaving at 5 to 3.
So this session, I mean, they're all interesting sessions, but this session I think will be very interesting because what you'll see is that we're bringing together a few speakers who are going to talk about some of the different ways that they've engaged with their community, with their users, with their staff, particularly during the pandemic, but not only, to communicate, whether that's internally or externally, and also to to provide training and skills to their members of staff, their scientists, their users to communicate themselves. So I think it's really interesting, and it fits right in with the theme of PARI of equipping people with skills to communicate. And it certainly when I was reviewing the abstracts, it's a struggle that we have at SKO where we'd like to find the opportunity to train people a little bit more in the building, and give them the skills to present, to do videos, to do posters and so on. So it's very much in line with the theme of PARI. So I think it's going to be a great session. What I propose we do is we go through every speaker, every presentation, and then we'll have time at the end for questions and answers. And so for our remote participants, I will be keeping an eye on the Zoom chat, and you can ask questions. I mean, we've got 20 people in the Zoom room. You can ask questions either on the chat or directly by speaking, whichever is more suitable for you. Now, in terms of presenting, what I'd like to do for all of our speakers is get you, if you haven't already, get you to join the Zoom meeting as a participant, mute your laptop, and then share your presentation from your laptop. That'll be easier rather than trying to manage from a presentation laptop. So without further ado, our first speaker is Terry O'Connor from the European Molecular Biology Lab to tell us about their internal communications during the pandemic. And Terry, are you?
Once I can get to, because Zoom just minimized itself.
Okay.
And now I'm having to unminimize it. Okay. It's still minimized. Anyway, I will mute.
Yep.
Okay. So I should be able to share.
You should be able to.
It's just done the same thing again. It's a window in Windows. Right, so
there you go. There you go.
Okay, so thank you very much. I hate to start the session off with reminders of bad times in the past, but anyway, bad times in the past. It's amazing how quickly people forget, but these are headlines from February, March 2020. That's the official Italian Gazette imposing restrictions. I don't know why this is not showing you full screen. Can you see full screen anywhere else?
I'm seeing it's like this.
Yeah, that's weird. Anyway, maybe I will exit full screen. Still doesn't.
Yes, I think you need to change to presentation mode.
Was, but
Go,
yeah, I was in here. That's where I was.
there we go.
But
Yeah, it was the next one.
anyway,
Ah.
so it seemed a long time ago. There was a new virus, but there's been new viruses before. Remember that? And then all of a sudden became a bit of a concern, but there were flight restrictions. You couldn't fly to China anymore. And then people said, well, maybe you should wear a mask. And then other people said, maybe you shouldn't. And then all of a sudden, zap, Italy closed 4 provinces. China shut down an entire city. Suddenly people started dying. And at that stage, obviously public health authorities, that was the focus. But in research institutions, like fixed organizations or universities, people were going, what am I supposed to do now? And there was quite a challenge, I think, for a lot of internal communications teams. In research infrastructures, we have a slightly different perspective, I think, than some other research organizations. So just as a reminder, EMBL has 6 sites across 5 European countries, 4 European countries in the UK, anyway, 5 European countries. More than 90 nationalities. We have a very young workforce because at any one time we have around 200 of the 1900. We have about 290 PhD students, plus a lot of postdocs. That's the way that system works. And so at this point, this little diagram came in very useful. It's something I did over a decade ago. If you ask people what's the most important thing that you should tell staff, most of the time they'll say things like the organizational objectives or where the toilets are. Actually, it's how not to get killed. And if you think about it in those sense, being able to just explain that actually at this point, this is a crisis. People could really die if we don't give them correct information. It's not our job to protect them in that sense. That's public health authorities. But as an intergovernmental organization, and as Phil said earlier today, we are here in effect in our own country. And that's the case for us as well. So we were aware of that, and this proved helpful. It's in focusing people's minds. So what was the issue? Yes, perspective. It's common for people to be in their own little bubble, particularly in research institutions, because they're generally focused. We're not asking them this most of the time to deal with real world issues, like it's pure fundamental blue skies, discovery driven, whatever you describe it. And so we were essential to avoid the bubble effect. We didn't want people sort of going, oh, we should be allowed to do this when no one else out, if you like, the real world was allowed to. So there was real stuff happening. Clearly, our staff wanted certainty. There wasn't any. So there's a risk for that. And the temptation there is you say nothing, but they still wanted to know some information. And particularly for an organization with multiple sites like us, or even if for a single site, they want to know what's happening to their friends or relatives, people who have been off-site on holiday and all of a sudden couldn't come back. And we had quite a lot of people like that. We had one person who was supposed to start at our site in the UK, happened to be in the US, couldn't physically turn up for 2.5 years, or actually 2 years. There was some worry also about research projects. If we have to shut down, what happens to our mouse lines or our fish or whatever? Similarly, there was a lot of concern, which I think was actually very positive to see, about the effect on PhD students and postdocs. If we shut down for 6 months, what happens to research projects? So these are the sorts of things that everybody starts going at you at the same time, and saying, you must tell people this. Okay, so one of the major concerns that we realized very early on was not just the physical health, but the mental health aspect, particularly for younger people, particularly for those, I have in mind, for example, some of our PhD students at EMBL Rome live at Monte Rotondo. It's about an hour outside Rome. It's a nice town, but they don't speak Italian, and it's not a very large town. So what do we do for them? So that led to some quite quick decisions, which I think, looking back on, we didn't get entirely right, but I think, overall, I think this was a lesson that we have now applied elsewhere. Very quick decision making is required. So when you have that priority on a health issue, you can say, okay, staff need to be provided updates. So we're all aware in communications that you have researcher X, Y, or Z who was never very good at getting back to you with approval for their research research paper, or there's always somebody who can't quite sign off on this curriculum thing for public engagement. This time around, that didn't happen. They were told if they have to provide input, they provided input, and they did. Seamless working across a small team, not very large. So communications with our health and safety, with the heads of sites, with HR, the DG directly, meant that there was a team so that we could make sure we had all that information, and our Director General was briefed on the whole big picture and also on what policy issues. So if you send people home, which we did, along with everybody else, the labs got shut, but we had sufficient time to say, if we just shut the labs, we have to euthanize our mouse lines. We don't want to do that. So we didn't have to, because we had worked out a system where, with local authorities, where we could have people on site to maintain essential services in that way. But it also meant that we could think about it and say, if you're working in a wet lab, you have to be on site to do your research, and you're sent from home. You can't work from home. If you're told to go home and all of a sudden your kids' schools are shut, you can't work from home because you have to do childcare. So all of those sorts of things were really considered. And because you might say they're all policy questions, yes, but they were communications related. And in fact, those types of concerns came up to the GG through HR, talking to us, people talking directly to us, and then we were able to do that. So I think that's the lesson that we learned. It has to be seamless. You have to recognize that there's a great potential for stuff ups. Somebody says we should be doing that, and it might be the right thing to do, but there are always consequences. As a result of this, we've done the same thing with the invasion of Ukraine. People wanted immediate action. What are we going to do about this? And we used exactly the same principle of saying, well, hang on a minute. There are consequences to all these actions. We need to be able to take them and think about them carefully, so we're not doing the same thing. And really, it's a question for other people. I mean, what did you do? Because, you know, there were times when we were going, okay, maybe we didn't quite get that right. You know, there were quite some very upset younger people because they felt that their concerns were being ignored. We didn't realize that we were ignoring their concerns. We thought we'd address them, but it's those little things. If I could just go back one. I think the final point, which you can't see, actually says stop communicating when you have nothing to say. And that's one thing that we learnt after a couple of weeks. When you get in the habit of doing daily updates or then weekly updates, if you haven't got anything to say, don't say it. But make sure people know that this week there isn't an update because nothing's changed. But once we realised that, that worked quite well. And then they just get used to the idea that when they see something from the DG about COVID restrictions, it's important. At the first stage, it was, it's okay, we know what's going on, we're looking after you, and then they want to know what changed. And so at that point, we said, okay, we'll only tell you what's changed. So there you go. Short.
Great. Great start.
Hopefully you could understand it and I wasn't speaking too quickly.
Good stuff. Thank you, Terry. No, that's a great start. If I could ask people to keep their questions, we'll.
You want me to get out of this? Stop sharing?
If you want to stop sharing, yeah, that'd be great. So hold on to your questions. We'll get to those at the end of the session before wrapping up. So without further delay, I'm going to move to the next speaker. And we have Kat Roarty to talk about the expense work and how they responded to the pandemic with their community engagement activities. Kat, over to you. All good. We can see your screen. We can't hear you, however.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Very faintly.
Oh, okay. Bear with me 2 seconds. Let me change. I need to stop sharing. Is that any better?
That's better, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Right, let's try this again. Okay, so go share screen. And presentation mode should just be coming now.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Okay. I'm conscious of time and I'm conscious of the ones in the room wanting to go to the next session at 3 o'clock. So I'll whiz through some of it. I'm not going to show you some of the videos and animations, but you can see them on the Expanse website. So I'll come to that in a minute. So good afternoon all. Thank you for taking the time to attend the session on our community engagement and grant outputs. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. Our presentation will highlight the main community engagement activities and outputs from our grant Expanse, the European Open Science Cloud, short for EOSC, photon and neutron data services, which is achieved through the collaboration with a number of European members. So what is Expanse? Expanse was a Horizon 2020 and Infra EOSC 5B call. It's a 3-year grant that started on the 1st of September 2019, and we were awarded a €6 million grant funding from the European Commission. We'll come to the partners in a minute, but our lead coordinating partner is DESI in Germany, and the partners are National Photon and Neutron Research Infrastructures. I've listed the website on there just so that you can have a look at a later date. So it's just expanse.eu. We also have a sister project called Panosk, which is the Photon and Neutron Open Science Cloud, making fair data a reality in 6 European research infrastructures and developing and providing services for the scientific data and connecting these to the European Open Science Cloud, again, EOSC. The grant itself, the opportunity behind it is for the project to create enormous opportunities for the scientific community and through their findings for humankind across the globe. This will also be achieved through the collaboration and federation of the 10 national PANRIs, which you can see on your screen at the moment, based on the EOSC services and partnership, and will become a game changer with the scientific user community. So it's all about trying to work on how to make research data openly available through open access. So it's really about open data for open science. The main partners in this, as you can see, is we've got DESI, Hardset DR and Hardset B from Germany. We've got ALBA in Spain, Max4 in Sweden, PSI in Switzerland, Electra in Italy, Soleil in France, and then we've got Diamond and ISIS Neutron and Muon based in the UK. Just like everyone else during the pandemic, we were directly impacted on how our elements could be and how we would and could be delivering our deliverables for the grant. So as most of you will know who've been involved with European grants, you have measurable deliverables that have to be delivered throughout the lifetime of the grant at different milestones. Diamond is responsible for work package 6, which is the dissemination and communication of Expanse. And our deliverables were all around international conferences, user meetings. Well, unfortunately, none of those took place. So we had to put our thinking caps on. Because of travel and changing requirements, it was really challenging to meet. So to raise the awareness and importance of our project for the PAN community, we kind of turned it on its head. So rather than attending user meetings and events, we decided to map the audience. So who are the audience relevant to the Expanse project, ranging from facility users, research students, to industry users, publishers, computing staff, funding agencies. And by looking at that, it then also helped us create various different dissemination material that would be bespoke for those relevant audiences. So dissemination material that we created is that we have the collaboration space for all members. So we have a SharePoint channel where we can keep all the information from financials, timesheets to project plans, individual work package information, documentation. So a really bit of a depository for all the information in relation to the grant. Back in 2019, when the project first started and I originally joined, the first meeting we were still able to attend before the big C hit, was the DESI and European Expo user meeting in January 2020. And we created some lovely little postcards, which you'll see on the bottom left-hand side here, just to really raise traffic around the website, raise traffic on the Twitter page, but also having that face-to-face connection has been able to give something to somebody to take away. So we found that the postcards were great. We also created some infographics, posters, and also videos, which I'll come on to in a bit more detail now. The infographics we created were actually thanks to the lovely Dr. Emily Hillner, who is currently based at Max 4. So she was on a secondment at the time at Diamond, and helped create the infographic, the two infographics that you can see on the right hand side. One, really the life cycle of Panosk and what we're wanting to achieve, and then also highlighting the benefit of open data and again that cycle. There is a lovely animation video that goes with it that I'd be happy to show you. However, for shortness of time, I'll leave it, but I put the link in the chat so that people can view it at a later date if you so wish. No, don't want to. There we go. What we also did, because we have the challenge of not being able to meet users at the relevant user conferences, we decided to actually engage with users individually as the opportunity arose. So Diamond were heavily involved in the COVID Moonshot, which was, again, a really exciting open collaboration where we had individuals on site for a press launch, and it gave us a great opportunity to meet with these individuals face to face and actually ask them what the challenges around open data were. What are the challenges around open science? How can it help work towards pandemic preparedness? How can it help with AI drug discovery? And it's allowed us to create these 7 user advocacy videos for social media that we've got ready, which will also be launched later on this year for the final communications activity for the rest of the grant, which is due to finish in February 2023. Additional outreach material that we did was, we obviously had the standard website and social media challenges and channels. We've also created a promotional video. And again, one of the things that the pandemic allowed us to do, whilst not being able to see facilities face to face, is actually engage with what we lovingly call the HOC committee, which is the Head of Communications Committee, by contacting each of the facilities who are a member partner within Expands and ask them for any aerial footage they have, because we wanted to share with our collaborators and share with those, wanting to know more about Expands, what these different facilities look like, even if they haven't been able to be a user to visit maybe Max 4 or visit Soleil or visit Elva. So on the website, again, on expands.eu, there is an 8 to 9 minute promotional video, which has got some really fantastic aerial footage and internal footages of all the different facilities that have collaborated within this. We've managed to record all of our workshops, so a bit like today's session, there was a huge learning curve around the different options that you have, the different platforms that can be used. In the 2 years that we've worked on the grant so far, it's definitely come a long way. Things have improved and are some easier to use, some are more challenging to use. But it's also allowed us to come up with specific PDF use cases. Again, some of them very generic. So for the tomography, we've got a use case around COVID and the publication of open data on Zenodo, and also reflectometry, where we've sponsored the SXNS 2022 event earlier this year that gave us then a specific use case. And again, making our communication much more specific and much more targeted than maybe it would have been if we just attended generic big user meetings like AAAS and others. And then the final activity that we've done, again, through the pandemic, we've now been able to do a bit more travel. We were hoping to do a senior management engagement or senior director engagement at the most recent SRI, synchrotron radiation meeting in Hamburg. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, again, that was moved to virtual. We were due to host a director's lunch, really kind of highlighting the challenges around open data, not just from a data management plans or from individuals understanding what their rights are to their data, but really also flagging it at a senior management level to gain their understanding and get their advocacy and their support of the project and the changes that we're hoping to implement across all facilities. What it has allowed us to do is that we've started doing individual one-to-one interviews that is allowing us to do 10 to 15 minute videos, but also give us these short snippets of social media videos that we can use on the platforms, and also has allowed us to really get some expand statements and advocacy behind it, really showcasing the challenges and how important it is. So all in all, whilst it's been challenging from a European-wide collaboration not to be able to see those that you're collaborating with in person, overall, we think we've done a fairly decent job in delivering the project so far in the 2.5 years that we've had, and achieving the milestones by just changing the parameters a little bit to make it fit for us rather than being restricted by the pandemic. And that's all I was going to share with you at the moment. I will stick in the link in the chat, the links for the different websites and the different videos so that you can have a look at those at your own time, but making sure that there's enough time for other speakers as well.
Great stuff. Thank you, Kat. That was really good. You've clearly been busy over the pandemic, delivering a lot of stuff. What I'll do actually is I'll ask all the speakers if you can pass me your slides later on, you know, tonight, whenever, preferably as a PDF, but if not PowerPoint, and we'll share them on the Slack channel as well for this session. You can either do it directly or pass them on to me, and I'll be happy to share them. And if there's further questions we don't have time to address today, people can ask them on the Slack channel. Right, I'll move over to Silvana from Light Sources to tell us about how they've worked through the pandemic to do their engagement.
Do I need to unmute?
No, you're good.
Okay, excellent. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Silvana Westbury, and I'm the project manager for lightsources.org. I actually joined the synchrotron world in 2004 when I started working for Diamond Light Source, the UK's synchrotron facility, and I was there for 12 years before going away for a few years working in education and then coming back. So I actually joined Light Sources in November 2020, when obviously we were some months into the pandemic. So I'm just going to split my talk into 3 little sections: the collaboration aims and the scope, how we became stronger together during the pandemic, and then I'm going to focus on a video campaign that we produced during the pandemic, and talk about the kind of aims of that, but also some of the lessons that we learned while we were doing that project. So in terms of the aims and the scope, so lightsources.org is a collaboration of communicators. So we're communicators from about 30 facilities around the world, and we have a focus, which is the website. So that's an information portal which is for news, events, proposal deadlines, job vacancies. So what we're doing here is we're really pulling a lot of information from our member facilities websites, and important information that they'd like to get out en masse. We also celebrate successes and milestones. So for example, this year it's 75 years since the very first observation of synchrotron light in a laboratory. So we did some nice celebrations around that. We're also sharing best practice. So all of the things that Terry was talking about in terms of, you know, what happened when the pandemic hit and how were we going to respond. There were very regular meetings happening between the Light Sources facilities. So they were meeting, you know, several times a week at the beginning to really talk about all the things that that were going on and how the response would be, both operationally but also from a communications point of view. One of our key aims with Light Sources is to support early career scientists and engineers. And so we have PhD positions, postdoc positions on the website, but then we also aim to support events that are going on. So for the time being, you know, since I've been involved, we've been doing that virtually, but the video project is a nice example of how we've done something to reach those audiences with some nice online activity. And obviously we're connecting the whole community within our members. So this is just a screenshot of one of our meetings. And as I say, I really do think that that being together was a help, not just from a sharing of information, but I think also we were giving each other support at some really difficult times. And so I think that as Terry was talking about in terms of keeping the experiments going, a lot of the research that happens at Light Sources was directly for COVID. So how do you keep the COVID research, which was so important, going when everyone was, having to essentially be at home? So in a similar way to Terry was describing, there were rules set up for, for those experiments to carry on, and we prioritised those. And on the website, we had all the published research then all in one place, and that became a resource for, for scientists, but also the media and so on as well. Also things like how were science events going to happen during the pandemic, so how those went on virtually public open days. A lot of facilities did virtual versions, which was great, but discussing the pros and cons of the virtual event platforms and the virtual tour technology. So I think it really helped individual members to invest in platforms that would deliver and keep the high standards. Obviously, everybody was learning, so there were things that didn't go to plan for everybody, but then we would come together and talk about those, and hopefully that didn't end up affecting everyone. So in terms of the video project, I think I will share this video if that's okay. It's just a couple of minutes, but this is really kind of what inspired us in the beginning, and this is a video that we actually did at Diamond. So this is 10 years old, but I hope you'll enjoy it.
We've got no sound.
Oh, I think that might be something that something I need to do. Should I stop sharing and then?
I think when you share.
Yeah, you need to stop share, and then when you share at the bottom, when you click on share screen, it says enable sound and optimize.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Sorry, I do know that, but I forgot. Apologies. Let's try again. Sorry about that.
Born scientists, and it's just a matter of how we take that as we grow older.
What first got me interested in science was science fiction, and in particular Doctor Who.
I have a cousin, and when I was about 6, I really used to admire him because he seemed to know the answer to everything, simply because he's an engineer, and I thought I'd like to be as smart as he is, so I thought that was the place to be.
I do remember the first time I went into a library at the age of probably 5 or 6. The first book I took off the shelf was a science book, so something had inspired me.
Not everything's explained in science. There's a lot of things we don't know about. My curiosity was awoken by that.
We had a careers day at our high school, and we had a visit from a geologist who came in a plaid shirt with a big scruffy beard and told us all about field geology, and that really got me inspired.
What fascinated me was finding out things that people didn't already know. My favourite thing about Diamond is the potential for doing a wide variety of science at the facility. It's all very exciting. You get to meet people from a wide range of disciplines and understand how they approach a specific problem. I think it's very interesting.
Well, really my favourite thing about Diamond, I have to say, it's the people working here. I do enjoy the science enormously, and the engineering is stunning, but actually it's the people working here. They're amazing.
Diamond is a place where we use cutting-edge technology to support the cutting-edge science.
It's truly a world-class facility, and we are limited by our own imaginations. I mean, there is nobody preventing me from winning a Nobel Prize other than myself.
Diamond has quite a big role to play in a couple of the big challenges that face humanity. We've certainly got an energy problem, got pollution problems, and there are great bits of science going on here at Diamond now that I think in 10 years' time will lead to products that will actually help us overcome those barriers.
We're all born scientists,
So when you know, when we talk about wanting to get more engagement, I think that while we set the questions for those participants, we didn't tell them what to say. They weren't primed in terms. So that all just happened, you know, and it was amazing. And I was really, you know, inspired by that, and I remembered it. So when I sent that round to the other members, they were like, yes, this is great. Now, obviously, what we couldn't do during the pandemic was to go and film at each of our member facilities. So, you know, 24 member facilities. And in any case, we wouldn't have had the budget to do that. So there were restrictions on what we were going to be able to do. And so we went out to a few different video makers for tender. And the one that we chose to work with was actually Ben Liberton, who used to work at Max 4 and now does you know, freelance video making and science communication. And together we came up with a plan for what to do. So obviously we knew that our participants were located all over the world. We wanted to be able to brief them in a consistent way. So how were we going to do that? So what we actually did was so in terms of getting the participants in the first place, the members nominated 3 people who they thought would you know be would do well with what we were trying to do. We were particularly wanting those who were either early or mid sort of career, so that they would be inspiring for our target audience. And we knew that obviously we'd have to kind of tell them the same thing. So we set up Zoom meetings with them all, apart from one facility in Asia who that wasn't going to work for. So instead of that, we made a little video telling them, you know, what we were wanting them to do. And we also did a written brief as well, so that they knew what questions we wanted them to answer. So that was the bit that we really took from that earlier video was, you know, here's a set of questions. We were hoping to get consistent recording quality, so we gave them some tips about that. But because it was a selfie concept, we were very happy for them to record on their mobile phone, which most of them did. Some of them had support from the comms teams at their facilities, but not all. And, you know, one guy was halfway up a mountain, so he was just on his own up a mountain doing the filming. Some of them wanted access to the facility, so they were really keen to record their video at the beamline that they use. Others, as I say, that didn't matter, but, you know, there was some juggling of the time frame in terms of that. And then just, you know, there were obviously lots of pressures on people, but even so, we managed to get videos from every facility except one. So that was way more than we'd expected. So it worked out really nicely in the end. And so this is just a small sample of the videos, because we've actually got over 50 videos in total, because we had so each participant has a video for their own contribution answering the questions, but then we did a lot of montages as well. So we kind of chose answers to particular questions and put those together. And so that's been a really nice resource, which is not just on the website, but we shared it extensively on social media. I've just got a very short one, which is like less than a minute. Is that okay? This is just about night shifts.
I think night shifts are best with a cup of coffee.
Dark chocolate espresso beans.
It's caffeine.
Yeah, caffeine, sugar,
music.
Good music. Blast the beats.
Yeah, definitely
absolutely.
have some good music playing and have amazing company with you.
And don't ever look at the clock.
Don't look at the clock.
It's the
Make
worst
it so
you
much
can
worse.
How do I survive? Netflix, of course. I've watched so much of Nollywood, Bollywood, documentaries on things I never thought I would be interested in.
My tip to survive night shift is to visit other beamlines and see other people who are also working night shift. This gives me a feeling that I'm not alone.
Hard to find the next one, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's hard to find the next one, isn't it?
Don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure how many beamlines they have. So what we did is we launched it on World Science Day, and then we spread it over 4 months. So we were kind of putting out about 3 videos a week. And we got some really nice engagement. I mean, if you look at our sort of numbers on Twitter, we don't have as many followers as, say, perhaps a facility who has been building it up for many years. But we were really pleased with the views that we got for the videos, particularly, some of these. So the Australian one was really popular. Obviously, what we were also banking on was the social media presence of those particular researchers. So they were great at helping to share these on for us, and all the time we're reaching new people, which is what we wanted to do. So we did Twitter, we did Instagram, and then we also did LinkedIn, as well as the website and our weekly newsletter. And in terms of the lessons learned, I think personally, because I've been kind of doing PR and communications for quite a long time now, I think it is worth looking back and remembering some of the projects that you've done in the past, because I think it can spark ideas that lead to exciting new projects. I think it's really important to keep your goal in mind. And I say that because one of the other potential video makers would have made beautiful videos, but probably only 3 of them, and he would have gone to the site and he would have done the filming. And that seemed quite attractive at the time, but then it was like, no, hang on a minute, we really want to be inclusive, so that's not going to work for us. So I think keep your goal in mind, and then communicate, as I said, your brief to participants in several different ways, so that if they forget what you've said in the Zoom meeting, they can look back at notes. The one issue we did have was that at DESI, the really brilliant scientist did his video, but from a comms point of view, they weren't so happy with the background that he'd shot it against. So they actually asked him, to do it again. So I think maybe we could have checked the locations first. That sounds like a simple thing, but we were doing it for lots of facilities, and that was the only one where that became a problem. I think that you have to really put in what you want to get out in terms of your time as a communicator. It was a lot of work, both for me and Ben, so we did it as a partnership. Obviously we had to tailor videos, and if you're putting things on to say Instagram, you've got to have different size and the lengths and things. You need to think about that. I think trust the participants to go above and beyond, because that's exactly what they did. They were amazing. And then what I'm thinking about at the moment is how we can reuse that content to make sure that we're making the most of it with other special days and things that are coming up, that we could put these out again, because I think that that's another good way to reach new people. And that's it. That's just a list of all our members. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Silvana. Just a bit of a housekeeping. There's 5 minutes to go until the next sessions, not here, but in the other room. So if you're a speaker in one of those sessions, like Emma is, feel free to go. If you're able to stay with us longer, please do, because we have one more talk to go through, and then be great to go through some questions. I'll turn to Tabia from EMBL, and this is actually a really nice segue, going from the sort of training and the sort of work you had to do remotely with different facilities to moving to training and equipping scientists to do their own communications. So Tabia, over to you.
Thanks. Hi, nice to meet you all, and thanks for having me. And I'm happy to continue the visual pathway of what you just started. I'll keep it brief in the interest of time, but I'd like to walk you through some ideas of how we use in-house design training to connect with scientists, not only within EMBL itself, but across all the 6 sites and throughout the pandemic as well. Why do we do this? We strongly believe that in the power of visuals, and you may all know the idea of pictures worth 1,000 words, but ideally the picture meets a specific quality, otherwise it really goes bad. So this is kind of the 4 topics I have: short introduction, give some guidance, design framework, the training we offer, and the empowerment of our colleagues and staff. So that's me. I'm not a scientist. I come from industry, and what I love at EMBL that the love to design and to science come together, and I hope I'll share that every day with my colleagues at work and inspire. What is important about a design framework and why is it important to have? It's how EMBL visually and coherently presents itself to the public. And this may seem a little bit off topic, but however, this guideline, this framework does help us a lot to streamline questions, templates, processes throughout EMBL. And I'll just share a couple of examples. What was a success factor as well was that these design guidelines, they're easy to access, they are publicly available. The principles are simple, so scientists, our colleagues, don't need to understand this in depth, and it's really straightforward. It's sustainable, so all the graphical elements we designed and we defined as well together with our senior management. They're technically set up in a way that they still kind of do meet all technical requirements in the next 3 to 5 years. They're holistic. They are kind of supporting our missions about one EMBL. Again, we want to make sure that EMBL is perceived as one organization. And we make sure that this framework is not seen as limiting, but as inspiring and as actually kind of giving more creative freedom based on collaboration and engagement that we do together with all the scientists across all sites. The next topic is training, and that is quite important for us, especially as you can see that reference to the Nature paper. The visual continues to work as a foundation of making sense of data. The tools, as we have seen, have radically changed, and they always will, especially throughout the pandemic, but the power of images has not. And that is a very good starting point for us, which really resonates well with our audience, actually across all EMBL departments. The different trainings we offer, again, they connect between the design framework and the empowerment. And what we offer is tailor-made trainings because on different sites we have different specifications, slightly different needs. Most of the trainings, they start with design basic principles, and I think you had a very nice session this morning. They link as well to different needs. For example, graphical abstracts. Graphical abstracts may be a part of a scientific poster, so we provide training on that. Including scientific illustration, data visualization, and because we are EMBL, molecular visualization for structural biology. And all these leads based on templates to then empower our colleagues, and not actually for the time at EMBL, but ideally beyond. Just to show you how we approach that, usually again, very simple, but hopefully this kind of sticks well. And then we always try to push this a little further because we are an inclusive organization. We want to make sure whoever is communicating in behalf of EMBL, make sure that the content, the visuals, graphical abstracts are accessible. Why is it important that we do visual illustration, and why is it important to visualize science? Because it does offer a whole realm of options when it comes, for example, to surgical visualizations. We have a lot of topics around microbiomes, a lot about stool. So how do we make sure that this is somehow pleasant to look at while we still make it relevant and informative? Same for anatomical visualization, a cross-section. The visual is all kind of flat, right? It's really hard to see what's actually what's the core message, what's the learning of this kind of cross-section. And if we visually translate that into an infographic, it just tells so much more in, again, a very short amount of time, much more than words can tell. In addition to that, we still have postdocs and pre-docs. They do have their poster presentations, and thanks to my colleague Abadias Munoz, I was allowed to show you that just at one glance, an outcome of what they bring to our trainings and workshops, and what the outcome is. And the right example is based on an EMBL template, which includes some tips and tricks, and together with the workshop, it's usually worthwhile and quite impactful in a very short amount of time. So this was just done in 1.5 to 2 hours, including design basic principles. We come to empowerment as well. So we have a lot of design resources as well. And I think what is quite special about EMBL, that we do not create them, but we create them together with the scientists and based on requests. We want to make this relevant. We do, for example, have templates, but not what we think what is needed, but what their request base as well. These, for example, scientific posters are not only available in InDesign, they're available in Illustrator and in PowerPoint. and various formats as well that it meets, for example, the US requirements to be more horizontally or now to meet more the virtual presentation modes. We do have a huge library of scientific icons. They're copyright-able. All of our scientists can change them without any legal limits. They're in different formats available, easy to embed in PowerPoint. Colors can be changed in PowerPoint as well. They always come with tips and tricks. There's so much how we can do to facilitate and streamline the whole workflow, make their lives easier. In addition, we have an image database. Our thinking is quite open access. So whatever we create for EMBO communication services, we make them available to all EMBO staff in our data management system. In addition to that, we want to make sure that people are supported, and that's where actually it's worthwhile. We have open office hours, so we are approachable. People can dial in. We want to make sure that at whatever stage they have, whatever tool they use, we give them support, and we make sure they advance their science and help advance their visual communications. Our database has now more than 3,500 relevant assets to be continued, and that's really kind of thanks to the team, to the whole creative team and to communications who does the support this to further evolve. Yeah, and that's my last message. Don't be a design dinosaur. So I hope you get a few ideas on how we approach this. Feel free to reach out anytime. I'm happy to discuss more. I'm here in person as well until Wednesday. Maybe just to give a little bit more like a personal kind of opinion and insight. For our work, it's always helpful to stay curious, to collaborate, to be positive, especially in the last 2 years. And I think that's where the power of visuals can do really a lot, because we do talk about nice things. And we want to make sure we inspire and we help creative problem solving in our remit of visual communications. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers. That was really interesting. Yeah, I can certainly relate to a lot of the presentations that were given. And Tabia, I mean, the work that you're doing in setting up these guidelines and templates for your staff is where SKO wants to go. So it's amazing to see that, and I'm very envious. very envious. It's great stuff. Okay, now if you must go to the other sessions, please do. If you have a moment to stay with us, we'll take a few questions quickly, and I'll ask for short answers in the interest of time. If there are further questions, put them on Slack, and we can take them on Slack. So I had a question on the chat from Lucy Moorcraft. I think it was for Silvana. It looks like the selfie project gave you a better diversity of researchers involved. Is that the case?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. And I mean, obviously, we wanted that. You know, we were kind of that was one of our aims at the outset. But I think that because of the nature of our collaboration, you know, that was quite likely to happen. I mean, I think there's probably more that we could do in the sense that you know, I think that with diversity, there's always more you can do, isn't there? But I think we were pretty happy with it in the end.
Yeah. And your main audience for the videos was?
So is the early career. So I mean, it could be people who are thinking about what they might want to do. They might not know kind of what it's like to be a working scientist or an engineer. So they could be quite young, but you know, for the website, it's sort of PhD, postdoc type.
Yeah.
So maybe working, but not at a light source yet.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Question for you, Terry. How did you face vaccine hesitancy at work, and what policies, guidelines, or measures relative to comms did you put in place?
We ruthlessly crushed them. No. How did we face vaccine hesitancy? So there were questions immediately from staff about why there wasn't a vaccine. But EMBL researchers are predominantly molecular biologists. There are some virologists. We don't do vaccine development ourselves. Turns out that our beamlines are SAX and MX beamlines at Petra in Hamburg were actually working with BioNTech on understanding the process of mRNA as a potential delivery mechanism, and there had been some published papers on that. I have to say, there wasn't any vaccine hesitancy that we could detect from our staff in Italy, Spain, France, or the UK. And I think that overwhelmingly the staff based in Germany, they're not all German. As I said, we have more than 90 nationalities. Germany still only has about 79% of its population with one dose. It is very strong, but that's not in the scientific community. So it was really more of the bubble issue, making sure that the staff recognised that simply because they thought they were doing a really important job, well, they were helping, as Savannah says, like helping to understand. So one of the first images of the spike protein, for example, understand that the critical public health advice on the spread of the alpha variant and what it meant, that was distributed across Europe through MLEBI and using the sort of data connections that EOSC has enabled as well. But it was, hang on a minute, simply because you're working in science doesn't mean that you should get access to a vaccine for somebody working in a hospital. And sometimes it was, just that subtext you had to put in and remind people about their place in the ecosystem. I mean, I think that's the same in a lot of other organizations, but in research organizations, they're important. Well, yes, but at the moment, the hospital is more important. So it wasn't hesitancy as such. I think there was a great deal of frustration. And that lasted for a couple of weeks when people were saying, why aren't we getting our own supplies of vaccine? Okay, where would we get it from? Yeah. And we crafted a message from the DG to basically say, hang on a minute, some of you are saying, why aren't we giving you vaccines ourselves? Where would we get that vaccine from? It would mean we'd have to take it from somebody else, like hospital workers. And as soon as you phrase it in that context, people go, oh shit, hadn't thought about that. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Plus, we also made sure that all of our staff, regardless of where they work, can access the national public health system, so they could get the vaccine whenever other people may call help too. I had actually a question, if I could, which is to both expand and leap in terms of the use of video. So you did remote video endorsements, which I thought was really good, and then you did a series of selfies. We did a variant of that with some of the COVID-related projects that we were working on. So we got we asked for third-party endorsements, but through Zoom interviews or selfie interviews.
Yep.
And generally they worked. It took the team couple of weeks to sort of get their heads around it. My question is, have you, since people have started to come back on site, I've seen that senior managers or senior scientists who would have accepted a sort of selfie style video because that's in the pandemic, and are saying, no, I want the full television production version. Are you getting that response too? Because we're saying, hang on a minute, like, who's the audience for this?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is that for light sources, because we're always going to be wanting to reach out, our participants could be anywhere. So I think that's an argument for us. And I think sometimes, you can say we won't get that person unless we do it this way. So when we did the 75th, we had a symposium which had, Adiona, a lot of the people who were involved in the early days of synchrotron science, who just wouldn't have, we wouldn't have been able to get them together, probably regardless of the pandemic, because they're all over the world. And so we did that event online. So yeah, I think obviously you need to have your reasons why, but the television production ones are so much more expensive, aren't they? So I mean, with all those videos that we did, that was a $30,000 project.
Yeah, and takes forever.
Can take a long time. Yeah.
So Okay, I guess we'll have to wrap it up in case people would like to join one of the other sessions, but I'll just wrap up with one question then to all of our speakers. Do you see the pandemic as having been an opportunity for comms, whether that's internal comms or whether that's community engagement or whether that's providing skills and training? Has it been a positive, has it had a positive impact on the way you do communication? So I'll start with Taryn.
Oh.
Or was it mostly a challenge, and has it changed in a permanent way the way you do things?
Okay, so from a communications management perspective, I do sometimes say my job is one of existential angst. Why does any organization have a communications team? If it's a research organization, it's not there to do comms. So the communications department has to demonstrate why they're contributing to the wider goal, right? And you say, well, it's a bit of a no-brainer because science has to be communicated. I think what happened as a result of the pandemic is that, as I showed, that diagram of saying what's the most important thing here. At the moment, it's health and safety, public health advice, for example, for staff. That concept that we operate according to very clear priorities, that certainly helps me and Tabea and our colleagues to get that message across, that we don't just do things because we think it's a good thing to do or because it's a nice or because we like that design. There's a strategy that sits behind it. And so in that sense, the pandemic was useful. Because they're saying that, but the pandemic is useful in the sense that that helped our colleagues in the science world, who are often quite understandably blinkered. We want them to focus on very narrow things, but it helped them to understand that there are lots of other people focusing on also very narrow things, and they have a legitimate point too. I think Tabea can speak because she did the work, but it also, by being remote, by everybody being remote, it really significantly helped us with the uptake of templates and remote work. We don't have the people to do everything for everybody. So if you provide them the training and you provide them the template, you're enabling them, as Tabea says, you're empowering them to do it themselves within the constraints that we still need to impose, because there's still a corporate strategy, there's still branding requirements, there's still reputational risk, etc. So I think it helped in that aspect. Where it didn't help was that it was pretty much a new team. We had site comms officers at the 4 smaller sites. They met each other for the first time 2 years after some of them joined, and that building a team, and so there was a lot of what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? That you wouldn't have had if you had a chance to talk it over. And in the end, we used Slack, and I kept saying to people, don't put a 30-minute meeting in Zoom. If you've got a question, just use Slack and say, I'm sorry, have you got a second? Can I just check on that? That took a while to get in, but that's helping a bit more too. I think that's one of the potential negative legacies of this, that people will go, I have to have a meeting with you to talk about it.
Yeah.
Or we could just talk about it.
It's certainly something we saw at SKO when we implemented the new brand that our Director General was speaking about a little bit this morning. I was actually surprised to see that, and we developed a brand book with strict guidelines and ways to do things and ways not to do things. And I was actually surprised to see that our people embraced that, because it gave them a framework, and that's something they understand, and they went, oh yeah, okay, and they actually took it on board, and we develop things within that framework, which is exactly what we want.
Yeah.
Tabea, on the pandemic?
Yes, both directions. So at first it was amazing, like we had a lot of participation in the training because all of a sudden people had time. So that was really kind of time to, to really work on their complementary skills. However, like after half a year in the pandemic, I think we all collectively had Zoom fatigue as well. And depending on what we train, there is still kind of good reasons that there is a workshop where you just are literally in the room, work on something together. What was quite nice, like what helped us again to end on a positive aspect, for all the scientists on other sides, they're now more used to dialing. So which there was a little bit of hesitancy at the beginning, but now it's really kind of a part of our daily job, right? To just share screen, help them remote as well. And it's trained us actually as well, trained the trainer to be more specific on how we give feedback. So I think that was in the end quite a good step with regards to improvements, career skill, career development, skills development for everyone in that setting.
Right. Thank you. That's also something we tried to push here, actually, which I think coming from our HR, which I think is really interesting and has a lot of potential, is this sort of internal knowledge sharing and skills sharing, right? And it's seeing your colleagues as professionals and who have their expertise, and we know how to do certain things, and sharing that internally with our people is very appreciated. Thank you. Silvana?
Yeah. So I think that there was definitely a lot more engagement at the meetings. So we had, all of a sudden it was everybody wanted to come to the meetings, which was, great. Obviously, some of the things that we were talking about were very tricky, but I think that's carried on. And so now we choose a topic each month. So the meetings are less frequent, but we choose a topic each month, which we can talk about rather than just talking about the pandemic. We can talk about other things. So next month, we're actually going to be talking about onboarding and how, one of our members has done a big project around, new staff coming on board, and they're going to share what they're doing with us on that. And so I think that's been great. However, we definitely want to get together in person again, because I think you can see with this, it's so nice to talk to people.
Absolutely. And this is really interesting for us. We really, really wanted to do Parry in person, but we also really, really had to do it online and have Zoom meetings. So, having those two things at the same time is an interesting, I'm sure there'll be lots of lessons learned afterwards, but it's the new world. Right, Kat had to go, so this brings our session to a close. So I just wanted to thank you all for attending. Thank you to our speakers, and apologies for the delay. This is being recorded, so we've captured all of it, and it will be made available after the conference.
Great.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.